Coming up on the Pacer Pulse podcast, why the report of Yves Missi being available actually matters to the Pacers, what he can bring on both ends of the floor, and what a move like this would signal about the direction of this roster. What is up, Pacer Nation? Welcome to the Pacer Pulse podcast, the heartbeat of Indiana basketball. I'm your host, Sean Trader, and I wanted to go over this report that was put out by 8 points and 9 seconds, where they talked about how Yves Missi, it's been reported that he is being made available by the New Orleans Pelicans. And I thought this was very interesting considering the interest we've already had in him, of course. And it was reported by Michael Grange of sportsnet.ca, so I don't know how credible that is. But it looks like they're truly trying to embrace the Derek Queen era. So it makes sense, but I thought this was very important for the Pacers. But not just about Yves Missi, it's about if the Pacers are really serious about investing in a center for the long term next to Tyrese Haliburton. And after we saw that reported, beginning of December, how the Pacers were looking for their center of the future, I think there's a lot of different avenues that can go where you can take that. Where are they looking for a young center like Yves Missi, where he might not help win a lot right now, but I'll go over to as why that may be the case, where he could help us win now. But are we going to go with more of a veteran center, like a Ivica Zubac, Nicholas Claxton, all guys that are still relatively young? But it just depends on what their definition of young is and how young they're willing to go. So, very interesting to me because we have had interest in Missi and the fact that he's available. Maybe if something can get done on both sides, it's an interesting thing to see, but it really paints that picture of, are we willing to invest in a center for the long-term future now next to Tyrese? Or are we going to try to wait for a bigger fish? But I wanted to talk about that today and why this report matters, guys. And that's a big reason why this matters, because we have shown interest in Yves Missi already. The fact that New Orleans, they're willing to trade him, of course, paints a pretty easy path for us, let's say, into making negotiations with New Orleans. I mean, we've already traded with them in the past to get our first round pick back from last year. So maybe it would be easy to work with them, let's say. We have a little bit of a repertoire with them, or rapport, excuse me. We have a little bit of a rapport with them. So it would make a deal possibly getting done a little bit easier. I don't know what the Pelicans would be looking for. That's kind of the big thing. But I want to say, why New Orleans would even listen to any sort of trade package we'd have to offer is we have young players we could offer in return for Yves Missi, where they're still going to have young talent they could add to this team, evaluate. I know they have no reason to lose this year, but I'm not sure if they have their first round pick after this season or not. I don't know their draft pick history. If they can get a guy like a Jarris Walker, let's say, for Yves Missi, and I'm not sure what else he'd throw in that trade. I'm just kind of speculating. This is like a proposed trade I put out there before. Maybe that's why New Orleans takes the phone call. Maybe they're like, hey, we like Jarris Walker's potential. He was the 8th overall pick in his draft. He's shown flashes of being a great shooter, especially lately. He's been a lot better shooting-wise. We think maybe we can tap into the rest of his potential. We like his passing next to Derek Queen on the wing, whatever they want to say, whatever they're trying to build with that team. And maybe that's why it would behoove them to be interested in listening to us, and we'd be willing to give up certain assets for him. I'm not sure how much he's even really worth, but he was a second-team All-Rookie last year, so he definitely has some value. I'm not sure how the Pelicans view him. I was looking on Locked On Pelicans earlier today, and they were saying how he might be just viewed as a backup center, but I think he has more potential than that. But why the Pacers are a logical team to check in is, of course, we have a need for a starting center. We know that. It's been pretty obvious for the entire season. I do like Jay Huff, but I also think that allows more flexibility into what kind of center we look at in terms of what skill sets we get from that center. So I think Jay Huff helps kind of keep that flexibility open because he can stretch it from three, so we're not needing a three-point shooter per se from the center spot. But Yves Missi has a lot of talent still, and I think that's why we would make logical trade partners. I think we could offer the Pelicans something that they would want in return, that they can take a gamble on, and something that we need in return, where we're not going to have to sacrifice a lot. We're not going to have to trade any of our key rotation players. We're not going to have to trade Matherin, let's say, or trade like an Obi Toppin, or just any of these other younger assets besides maybe like a Jarris Walker or a Ben Shepherd or a couple second round picks. I'm not sure what his value is, Yves Missi. But I think we make very logical trade partners. And I think that's why this was worth diving into to me because of our registered interest already in Yves Missi and the fact that he's being made available. Now, just because he's available doesn't mean they are looking to trade him, absolutely looking to trade him. But I think it does show that they're willing to listen to offers. And if they get the right offer, I think they will move him. They did sign Kevon Looney this past offseason, which I thought was head scratching. He's not really been playing for them, so I'm not sure why they even brought him on. Maybe it's because they have been playing Yves Missi in hopes of like getting his trade value up to hopefully get something in return because he was drafted by the old regime they had. And Joe Dumars and those guys, they didn't draft Yves Missi, so maybe they want a fresh restart. And obviously, they got to put all their chips in the Derek Queen basket, which he's good. But after making that trade, what they did with the Hawks, like they can't come out looking bad on that. So I first wanted to talk about like the offensive fit he would have with the Pacers, and especially his fit with Tyrese Haliburton. So I've been kind of diving into Yves Missi's numbers here, especially his advanced on-off numbers on the offensive end. So for the Pelicans this season, he has positively impacted their offense. Their offense is legitimately better on the court or for the team whenever he's on the court. So they are scoring at a positive rate when he's out there. And before I get into how he would fit with Tyrese, I do want to touch on this that I think is a huge, huge point that our team really needs as that we kind of lack, and that is offensive rebounding. And whenever Yves Missi is on the court for the Pelicans, they are in their top 1% in the NBA in how many offensive rebounds they get as a team. So he has a clear impact on the offensive glass. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit too as I kind of go over some of his numbers he's been averaging lately. But on the season, he's averaging like 5.5 rebounds per game. So it does show on the season, he's averaging like 3.5 offensive rebounds a game, guys. So that's a pretty awesome number for one guy who's only playing about. Wait, 1 second here. That was last season. Let me look again. So it's actually 2.9. So that's actually still very good, considering that he's only playing like 18 minutes this year, 19, compared to about 26 or 27 last year. So he's going to help improve our offensive rebounding numbers. We've been pretty dreadful in that category this year, and as we've seen with like the Rockets, even though they have kind of taken a tumble, offensive rebounding does matter in the league. It does. It creates so many second chance opportunities. And just imagine, like, let's say he does get like 3 offensive rebounds a game for us if he comes to our team. That gives us a chance to possibly get 9 extra points per game. So I'm going with the absolute highest point totals he can obviously get, right, which is a 3-point shot. So let's say each one of those rebounds he gets and gives us a second chance opportunity, we hit a 3-pointer on those. That could literally determine X amount of games on the year and help you win more games. So it's just the more possessions you have with the basketball, obviously the better. So we've seen our team lose a lot in terms of that aspect too, with second chance opportunities this year, and we give up a ton of those. So he would really shore up that aspect of the offense and just really help us corral a lot more offensive rebounds, be more aggressive on the glass, because we haven't really had that. Miles was never that. I mean, we have guys that will hustle for boards every now and then, and we've been a little better lately on the offensive glass, but Jay Huff is an absolute like non-defender, or excuse me, not non-defender, but non-rebounder. So he's not really making an impact in that way on the offensive end. So I do think that's very interesting in terms of what he provides on the offensive end, but in terms of like how he fits with Haliburton, he provides a lob threat that we haven't ever seen before. Just a rim running, vertical spreading big or spacing big that can keep the defenses honest. Like he's just going to be such an easy lob threat inside, guys. We haven't had that in the past 10 years, essentially. I mean, Isaiah Jackson, obviously, like coming off the bench, but Miles Turner being our starting center for the past 10 years, we have never had a guy that's in there catching alley-oops. And I think that's going to open a lot of driving lanes for Haliburton, create a lot more passing lanes for him to kick it out to shooters, and then also just always having that threat of like, oh, I can just lob it into Yves Missi inside, and he's going to finish. He's a very athletic big man if you haven't seen his highlights. And I do think that's very interesting. And then like his screening and short roll potential as well. He has shown the ability to like score off the dribble some, especially in the mid-range. Obviously, you don't want him doing too much of that. But I think what I like most about his fit, especially next to Tyrese, is that he's going to be able to run out in transition. And Tyrese, we know, can find guys in transition. He can even like take it full court himself, Yves Missi. I've seen highlight on that. But like just the fact that he's a mobile big in that regard, where we know Tyrese loves getting the ball out in transition. He's just another target Tyrese can essentially hit in that aspect too. And we've seen how Tyrese pairs with big men. We've seen what he's done with Miles Turner, how they were the top like pick and roll duo a couple years ago in the league at one point. I'm not saying like him and Yves Missi will be, but I do think that like he can expand Yves Missi offensive game even more. And I think that's something the coaching staff is going to look into and be like, hey, like we know what Tyrese can do whenever we saw what he could do with Miles Turner. We think Yves Missi has a ton of potential. He's only growing as a player. He already has some pretty strong foundational skills. And at the very worst, he's at least a rim running lob threat. And I also like to point this out too. Back when Rick won the title with the Mavericks, he had Tyson Chandler as his starting center then. So it's almost like maybe Rick could try to mold Missi into that type of center. And I think that's what a center that Rick has really liked a lot in his career, whenever in his coaching career. So maybe he could be like, hey, I want, and just kind of shape and mold him in that way in terms of like being that defensive big, that lob threat inside, just crashing the glass, just defending the paint, really holding it down. I think he could do that, but like, especially on the offensive end, like I said, I think he could be kind of that perfect rim running big and lob finisher and short roll who could kind of do some post moves every now and then, take like advantage of some mismatches. But all in all, I think the biggest thing would be is he wouldn't be asked to score with this team. He would just be asked to finish. And we know with Tyrese, he gets people open, and all we need is like somebody that can finish those passes, essentially. So just imagine like Yves Missi would probably get like 6 extra points a game alone off just Tyrese Haliburton passes to him, or like maybe not even that, 4 to 6, let's say. So that's already going to increase his average a lot, and he's averaging like 5.5 points this year, but he's also not even playing but 19 minutes, like I said. So he did average like 10 or so his first year with the Pelicans, and that was really without a playmaker. So imagine that, like Tyrese next to him, getting him easy looks inside, dump off passes inside, lobs inside. And I just think it would be a seamless fit. And you also need that guy that is going to be the fifth starter on your team. And what I mean by that is a guy that's not going to command touches, a guy that's going to play his role. Like I just said, he's not going to be asked to make plays, but just finish them. And I think that's at the 5. I made this argument before that maybe that's all we really need. Maybe we don't need a guy that is going to want touches inside or is going to command the ball, kind of like what Miles has always done since he's been there, like who expects to be like third in the pecking order, let's say, in the starting lineup. That's what Miles kind of was. And it worked during the regular season, but we saw in the playoffs it really fell off. So I think we can kind of hand the reins off to like a Nice or a Nimhard, let's say, as a third guy in the lineup, or Neesmith or Matherin, whoever we go with. But I think Yves Missi could be kind of that fifth guy in that role and just be a play finisher. And I think that would be a huge fit for our team on the offensive end. And I just think it adds another dimension that we never had before with this team as a lob threat. Because if you've seen like highlights of Missi, he can get up, he can throw it down, and he's definitely an easy lob target. Like even when he had Dejounte Murray playing with him, he was able to pass and get Missi open a few plays and get him some easy dunks inside. And he's got good hands. So I really like that offensive fit on that side of the ball. And then I wanted to dive into what I see his defensive impact being. And I think this is even bigger than what his offensive impact would be, because he's not known to be like an individual offensive player, right? So going into this next part I want to talk about here is his defensive impact for this team. And the fact that he is an improving rim protector. Yes, he doesn't average like gaudy numbers in terms of block shots, but let me see. What's he averaging on the year in terms of blocks per game? So far this year, he is averaging 1 block per game, and that's in like 18, 19 minutes. So that's actually not bad for how much he's playing on the year. So he is a decent rim protector. And I think he's only going to get better at that, especially if he's playing more minutes, of course. Let's say he's playing like 25 to 26 minutes a game. He's going to probably be closer to like 2 blocks a game. I think that's safe to say, or at least 1.5. He is pretty decent in the passing lanes too, because he's able to guard out on the perimeter. He's able to kind of switch out on pick and rolls, where he's able to kind of switch onto guards and hold his own in that way. We never really had that besides what we've expected Isaiah Jackson to be, which he's kind of shown some of that in the past, but not so much this year, of course. So I think just having a center of that size that can move his feet like that on the perimeter as well and in space is huge. It's something that we've always kind of needed Miles to do because Miles has always just been like a drop coverage big. That's where he really excels at. So it kind of keeps your defense limited in that way. And we did improve on the defensive end last year, of course, but we're not like terrible, terrible this year. I don't know what we ranked right now. Maybe it's pretty awful now. But we've had times where we're like 20th, which isn't great, but you you would expect it to be worse with how bad we are. So seeing that he's been such a tremendous impact for the Pelicans on the defensive end. So his advanced on-off numbers, the Pelicans, they're like in the top 13th percentile in the NBA in terms of how many points they give up to the other team when Yves Missi's on the court. So essentially, he helps them give up less points anytime he's on the court. And then they're in like the top, let's say like 41% or like 31 percentile in the NBA in terms of field goal percentage they give up to the opposing team. So when Missi's out there, he's helping the Pelicans hold opponents to like shooting less percentage from the field or 3-point line, really from the field in general. But that's kind of what that shows. Like they're just teams are shooting less or less from the field against them when he's on the court, essentially. And then turnover percentage, they're forcing more turnovers when he's out on the court. And then offensive rebound percentage, teams are not rebounding, or they're not getting second chance opportunities, let's say, as much when he's on the court. So it shows like his impact on the defensive rebounding too that we desperately need. We've needed that for the longest time. We know how much Miles hasn't been a rebounder in his career at the center spot. I mean, obviously Sabonis was a big rebounder, but didn't have the defensive impact. So if Missi can kind of bring somewhat both of those together into one player, I'm not saying he's going to be peak of Miles or Sabonis in either of those regards. I'm just saying if he can help on the boards, help protecting the paint, that's going to be huge for this team, guys. We give up so many points in the paint. We give up so many rebounds. We usually lose the rebounding battle just about every night. So it's encouraging to see he's impacting their team in that regard. And then they allow less free throws whenever he's on the court, too, to the other team. So that's always something good to see. They defend, I guess they have more disciplined defense, you would say, when he's out on the court. They're not fouling as much, giving much easy buckets at the free throw line. So all in all, though, like Missi, he has been a plus on this Pelicans team. The team is winning whenever he's in the game, essentially. He's been a winning player for their team, and they don't have many of those this year. So what he really contrasts with in terms of Jay Huff in that regard on the defensive end is he's going to be able to guard in space. Jay Huff is mostly just strictly drop big. And we've kind of seen that lately where teams have been putting smaller guys on Jay Huff because they're not really worried about his offensive game as much. And then I think they know too that like bigger guys can kind of body up Jay Huff. And he's not a strong presence in that regard. He can block shots, of course. He's great at that. But he's just not a strong defensive presence other than that. Where Yves Missi can kind of hold his own inside, but he can also defend in space, block shots, and really just give us another dimension that we don't have on this team currently. And I think that's where his defensive impact would be the biggest on this team. And just the fact that he's only 21 years old, guys. Like he has so much room to grow on both ends of the floor. I don't think he's ever going to be a go-to scorer or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. But he could always be top of the league in terms of elite finisher, especially with the easy buckets he's going to get on this team. And then if he could mold himself into, let's say, a Tyson Chandler-esque defender that Rick has worked with before, that maybe he could turn Yves Missi into that kind of defensive center. I think that's what the Pacers could really look for and covet when it comes to Yves Missi. And I think that's what's very interesting about this report in general. And just that this team doesn't need just a shot blocker. They need a problem solver at the rim. And I think Yves Missi provides that. So, to me, I wanted to also touch on, after making those points, that what would a trade signal about this team moving forward if we trade for like a Yves Missi, let's say? And I think that's a very important conversation to have because, so I know we are trying to win now, obviously, right? We're trying to maximize on Haliburton, his health. I mean, the team, we obviously just came off an NBA Finals, Game 7. I would say we're looking to win now. So how does trading for a Yves Missi, who's 21 years old, fit into that in terms of that win now structure? And I think that rightfully so, us fans, us as Pacer Nation have a right to question that in terms of what direction we're really going. It would seem as if they're prioritizing the youth movement or like not necessarily as much winning for next season. But also, I would argue that Yves Missi can help you win. Maybe not as much as like a Zubac would or a Kessler or even a Claxton, some of those other names you've been hearing on Yeka Okongwu. But I think he is somebody that could develop into that. And I think that maybe the Pacers see that and they say, hey, center is not really a spot that we think we need to invest heavily on. And clearly they showed that because we didn't want to pay Miles Turner. Or I know we wanted to, but then we got surprised by the Bucks thing. But we obviously didn't want to pay him a certain amount to a certain extent. So I think they do see that center is not really a position that we necessarily need to spend $25 million per year on. I mean, unless it's a certain center, of course. We've looked at some of those, like Claxton. But it's very intriguing to me, guys, because I think it kind of signals, is this team willing to kind of stretch out this window? Because a lot of these guys are still younger, right? There's Haliburton, like 26, 27. Neesmith around that same age. Nimhard, he's about 25 or so. Jarris, 21, 22. Furphy, 21. Shepard, about 24. We're going to be getting a top 3 pick, hopefully. So that guy's going to be about 19 or 20. So maybe they see this as like somewhat of a resetting of our timeline, where they do see that obviously they're going to try to win games. But they also see that, hey, maybe we pivot and we try to develop a center at 21 years old, someone that can learn from even Siakam, because Yves Missi and Siakam both are like from Cameroon. So yeah, I think you kind of have that aspect too, where they would be able to connect on that front. So I think it just would signal a lot in terms of what our direction of a franchise is going. I do think, obviously, no matter what, they're always looking to win. So that would always be the top priority. But I just think that it does show that maybe they're willing to kind of extend this window out a little bit and see what they have in their team, like how Haliburton looks coming back from that Achilles injury, because it's not guaranteed that he's going to be 100%. So are they willing to like trade big assets to get like a Zubac and go all in if they still have some uncertainty, or do they want to be like, hey, how about, let's say in the next 2 years, we're still looking to contend for championships, of course, but we're wanting to draft a center that we can really develop and bring in and not have to give up all our future assets or a bunch of future assets to get that said player. So I could see where that makes a lot of sense. And that's where maybe the patient game is what wins out here. I know it's so hard not to just chase that window because we're in game 7. We were that close to winning the NBA finals, but sometimes an injury like that helps to reset some things. And when you get a top 3 pick potentially too, it helps you kind of reevaluate. And we've seen how hard it is to do to play the 2 timeline thing. We've seen the Warriors try to do that. Hasn't worked out at all, but they've also struck out in the draft. And I'm not saying we have struck out in the draft. I think Matherin's a great player. Walker, it's to be determined. We've hit on Nimhard. We've hit on, it's to be like determined still about Furphy, but I do think he's got a lot of potential. Shepard's been okay, nothing like crazy. So we've had okay hits. It's just we haven't had any huge hits, of course, like star, like top 10, top 20 player potential picks. And the fact that we could potentially have that in this year's draft, it may change the outlook of this team a little bit. And maybe they see how this year has gone without Haliburton. They're like, oh, maybe we're farther back than what we think, even though we were in game 7. And maybe they think losing Miles hurts them more, which I don't know about that. But it definitely, I guess, didn't help because we had to roll with Jay Huff and Isaiah Jackson, a guy that's coming off an Achilles injury. Jay Huff, who's been pretty much a third-string center his entire career. So it did leave a gaping hole there. It's just, there's a lot to think about with that, guys. It's very intriguing to me, and it just shows to me, like, what, if we do make a trade for a Yves Missi, it kind of shows to me that they're willing to be a little more patient and not really just push all the chips in and just go for it all completely next year. So I think we have to keep that in mind, Pacer Nation, that we do trade for a Yves Missi. Yes, we're going to have to be a little patient. He's not going to be a guy that just comes in and blows our doors off right away. I know I was preaching some good numbers about him because he has. He's been a very effective player for the Pelicans this season, but there is a reason why he's playing behind Derek Queen and why they, I guess, decided to draft Derek Queen. I know they got a new GM, so I think that's just kind of the main reason. But I do think that Yves Missi has a lot of untapped potential. Does that mean he could be a high-level starter in this league? I don't know. Do I believe in the fact that the Pacers front office and this organization can bring out the best in Yves Missi, especially next to Tyrese Haliburton? Absolutely, I believe in that. That's what I really wanted to just kind of dive into this and just see if they do make this move. They're telling us development has an expiration date. So I'm just curious to see, guys, if we do make that kind of move. But it's very interesting the fact that he is available. And I just want to say, should they actually do this trade? And that's a big topic to think about, Pacer Nation. I would say if the goal is to win next year, then of course not. But also, it depends on what their other priorities are. And I explain that in terms of, do they really want to bring Matherin back if they see him as a big piece of this team moving forward? And how do they view the center spot in general? Do they think that you need a big salary spot guy at your center position to win an NBA championship? Do they actually truly believe in just the center by committee thing where if you have, let's say, a Yves Missi who could be a solid center, Jay Huff who might be just a better option off the bench than a starter who isn't just consistent every game as we've seen, but we've had him have big games that we've seen against the Pelicans, ironically, where he had 29 points, his career high. So maybe it's about getting guys in the right roles and obviously getting Haliburton back, and they want to see, hey, maybe we have enough at the center position if we get a guy like Yves Missi, who's just going to fulfill a role that we need. So I'm very on the fence about it, but I would say, depending on what they think about next year, if they think that we're going to go in and try to win now, I think that you maybe hold off on a Yves Missi trade. But if I think they're trying to extend the window, if they believe that we can get Yves Missi and he'd be enough to help us win now even, and we could develop him into the future along with this draft pick we're going to get and a lot of these other young guys that we plan on being on our team for the foreseeable future, then I think you make the trade. So if I say, if I had to make a bet on it, if I was like, hey, which side am I on? I think I lean more towards making the deal for Yves Missi. And I think it's just because he would come at a reasonable price. He's only making $3 million per year right now, guys. I mean, he was a late first round pick, so we're going to get him on a cheap deal. And he's a guy that could potentially he's already, I would say, outperformed that deal in terms of what he did his rookie season. So if he could average, let's say, even 12 points, 10 rebounds, a block and a half or 2 blocks a game, and just provide solid defense inside for us, I think that's a very serviceable center in the NBA. So it just really, to me, I get enticed by that. I get enticed by the potential. I think I would do that trade if I was the Pacers. And then it allows you to at least bring Matherin back, where I don't think he's going to command a $25 million dollar deal or anything. So you bring him back. You obviously bring in a top 3 or 4 pick, whatever it is. And then you do have at least more flexibility in shoring up some of the other spots on the roster if you need to. I think it allows you to still be flexible into the future. You're just still at least accumulating young talent. And let's say, what if we see enough from Missi and we're all right, clearly he's just a better backup center. Well, we would still have assets to trade for a starting level center. It just kind of buys us more time, even, if that makes sense, guys. It buys us more time into hey, all right, we need another center that is going to help us win now. We are ready to win now still. Haliburton looks like all NBA level Haliburton again coming into next season. We have more definitive answers by then. So maybe they're hey, let's trade whoever we have asset-wise. We have Matherin on an extension, or we have Neesmith can be traded then. Not saying he should be traded. I'm just spitting out names, guys. Jarris Walker, Shepard, Furphy, some of these other younger guys that we could trade, maybe our 2027 first-round pick, and really make a push to get a center that could help us put over the top. So that's kind of where I'm at on it, guys. I think that it would make a lot of sense. I think it potentially solves our center issue, but also buys us more time, and we at least get to take a chance on a player and see how he can develop, and if he can develop into that starting center of the future, then that's huge. That's a guy that you can get for $3 million per year right now on his rookie deal at that kind of production. That's huge, guys, especially with this CBA now, with how close we're already to that second apron and all that. We got to find ways to work in this roster construction and make it work for us. So I would I would say make a deal for that, especially if you're not comfortable with making a big splash right now and you want to wait and see. I think that's the best move, honestly, guys. I think you wait and see how Misi develops. Like I said, get your draft pick in the door, see what pick you're going to have, and you can really assess more after that. So I think that would be the right move. I don't think we need a big splashy move right now. But obviously, let me know what you guys think in the comments on YouTube, guys. I always love having the conversations with you guys on the YouTube lately and just reading your comments, conversing back and forth, getting your opinions. I love it. So always just please leave a like, comment, subscribe. And as always, if you could please leave a 5-star review on the listening platforms, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It would mean a lot to me, guys. It just really helps me grow this channel and really be able to improve. I love all the feedback I get from you guys too about how I can make this better. I'm always trying to get better. And I just can't thank you guys enough for that. So I'm always looking to improve. But as always, Pacer Nation, I will talk to you soon.